Thank you, Mayor Allen. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors and viewers and guests. Can I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Ma, at the special meeting of Council of the Township of Springwater, come to order at 6:01 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests? All right, seeing none. I will start by saying that the 2021 budget meeting is going to be taking place over several days on November 23rd from 6 to 9 p.m. That's today. Wednesday, November 25th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Monday, November 30th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. December 7th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and December 9th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. All sessions are going to last approximately 3 hours. Council will recess at the end of each session and reconvene deliberations at the next scheduled date and time. The schedule and order of business and listed times are tentative and based on department availability and is provided for guidance only and subject to change. Due to COVID, we're taking necessary steps to limit in-person meetings, and therefore members of council and guests are participating in the meeting electronically, and the meetings will be live streamed. Residents can watch the meeting live on www.springwater.ca/live. They can listen to the meeting on telephone by calling 647-558-0588. And with meeting ID will be identified for each meeting. And for this meeting, it is 830-9684-3392, and then the pound sign. And those unable to watch the live stream can review the meeting at their convenience by watching the video on the township's YouTube channel. Items marked on the agenda with the tab numbers refer to the corresponding sections found in the attached budget document, 2021 Budget and Business Plan, attached to the item 4.1 in the agenda. So I'll now call upon CAO Jeff Schmidt to provide an overview of the 2021 draft budget documents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So this evening kicks off our 2021 budget and business plan deliberations. So as you're aware, on an annual basis, we typically have our service partners, those being the Springwater Public Library, the Severn Sound Environmental Association, and the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority participate in our budget process. So this evening, we've set aside time for each one of those parties to provide council with their budgets for 2021 and allow council to engage with each of those parties to ask any questions for clarification. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I think I'll pass things back to yourself and or to our CEO, sorry, of the Public Library to begin tonight's proceedings.
Thank you. I'll now call upon CAO of the library, Jody Delgado, as well as Alyssa Shanahan, the Library Board Vice Chair, to present the Springwater Public Library's 2021 budget request. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm Jody Player Delgado, and I'm the CEO of Springwater Public Library. And just give me a moment so I can share my screen and bring up the presentation, which I think will be helpful for everyone to follow along. I have a slow computer, so it always takes a minute to start. Okay, I think we're good. Can everybody see that? I would also like to introduce Alyssa Shanahan, who is the Vice Chair of the Springwater Township Library Board, and she is going to be helping me present this evening.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present our 2021 budget to you. Although normally it would be in slightly different circumstances, but it has been a different year this year. I would also like to thank our many library supporters, staff, and library board who are watching this presentation safely from their homes. Libraries aren't in the business of books. They're in the business of community, says Curtis Rogers of the Urban Libraries Council. This year presented a new challenge to everyone, and STPL stepped up and continued to demonstrate that we are an important part of Springwater Township's community. The year 2020 started off great for STPL. We hosted our annual royalty party, celebrated the first ever Read Canadian Day, and we're ready for one of our biggest programming weeks, which is March break. And then, of course, COVID-19 started to spread rapidly. The township closed all facilities, including all library branches, on Friday, March 13th at 5 p.m., immediately before all of our March break programming. The province then closed all libraries across Ontario on Tuesday, March 17th. STPL sent all library staff home at this point and quickly moved to online programming. We actually had our first craft virtual program up on Sunday, March 15th. So we were one of the first libraries in the province to get ahead of that. A core group of staff worked from home, providing digital programming and adding digital resources and reaching out to patrons during the closure, and other staff took unpaid leave. Before continuing, I do want to shout out to STPL staff who went above and beyond during this crisis. And thank you too to a very supportive library board who enabled us to do what was needed to continue providing library service during this very stressful time. Although the doors to our physical branches were closed, the library was open 24 hours a day online. Staff were proactive in remaining connected with their patrons, especially our more vulnerable customers, and they called them up, helped spread information on how to stay safe during the pandemic, and just made sure they were all doing okay. We also provided online registration for new residents, for new library cards, because many residents then turned to the library during lockdown because they were in search of information, ebooks, resources, things to keep them busy during the lockdown. Due to the overwhelming demand for internet, our hotspots were very popular, and luckily we were able to add a couple more to our collection, and we still have holds on all of them due to the problems with internet that we know of in our township. One thing patrons did say they missed was the opportunity to come and browse our shelves. So we added online book recommendations, as well as once curbside started online book bundles. And some patrons said it was like Christmas when they got home and opened their book bundle and were able to see all the choices we made for them, and they loved it. We increased our presence online through our social media channels, revitalized our Instagram account, and added more subscribers to our e-newsletter through email, which has an open rate of over 70%. So that is quite high for e-newsletters. And we finally purchased our local history database. So we are very excited about sharing Springwater's history with all of our residents. As I mentioned, we started off the closure with an online craft program. Our regular Storytime program quickly transitioned to video. And once we reopened, we created craft kits to go with the online story program to make it a little bit more interactive. So families come into the library, they pick up our craft kit that matches the theme of the story time. They take it home, and after the story time, they get to make the craft. Unfortunately, we're not doing face-to-face programs, so this is a way of bringing that face-to-face and the more interactivity to our video programs. We also have our family craft programs with Crafting with Kathy. We promoted local authors. We changed our gardening program to an online program. We have genealogy programs. We have a virtual branch in the Nintendo Switch game, Animal Crossing, where children and teens can log in at a specified time and interact with the librarian and do games on there. Our Dyslexia Awareness Panel, which we held during Dyslexia Awareness Month in October via Zoom, brought together experts and parents of children with dyslexia, and we discussed the challenges that those children face, and it proved to really fill a need in our community. We have added STEAM, so science, tech, engineering, art, and math programs, as well as Lego programs each month, and we are just starting our how-to guides with our app. So we have a library app where you can access all the library catalog, put holds on books, check our calendar, and we have a how-to guide on that coming out. There have been challenges with these digital programs due to a lack of internet, as we all know in the community, and the lack of high quality technology for staff in order to do the programs. our laptops are old. We don't have the Adobe programs or the video editing programs. So we sort of scrambled at the beginning to pull it all together. Also, additional staff time is needed because doing digital programs is a very different method from our face-to-face programs that we're used to, and it does require more staff time, especially on the back end. But our staff have stepped up and amazed me with their creativity and problem-solving abilities, and they have many, many more ideas for digital programs to come up in the months ahead. When we closed, we weren't sure what we were going to do about summer reading, which, as you know, is one of our core programs. So I would say it's a great success story. We were able to transfer summer on reading to online, and it worked out really, really well. Originally, we were planning on hosting summer reading events at different parks throughout Springwater Township to bring in people from all of the township into our program. And we're going to launch that at the Springwater Elmville Farmers Market. Instead, with going online, we actually purchased the Read Squared app, which was promoted as part of the TD Summer Reading Club. And it allowed families to log in virtually so they could set up an account for their family, log their reading, there's games on it, and we were able to monitor it all from our end. We mailed out welcome packages to each participant who loved getting the snail mail. So that was old school and it actually worked out really well. And we ended up having 208 participants who read 101,791 minutes over the summer. We also shorted it slightly due to the pandemic. So that was just an incredible amount of reading that the children across the township did this summer. Many parents were happy to use this app and enjoyed the reward levels. Our ending survey indicated that over 75% of parents either felt their children maintained or increased their reading level due to this program, which with the online learning that has been going on since March, we felt was really, really important this year. They were also grateful that we continued the online summer reading club, and they asked us to work with schools and continue to do reading programs over the winter. As part of our summer reading, we did a popular Harry Potter read aloud. I would like to thank the mayor for participating in that, as well as MPP Downey. And we're hoping that next summer, fingers crossed, we'll be able to actually go back and host our summer reading events. But we are going to continue with this app because it worked out really, really well, and our families seem to enjoy it. So normally, this would be the part of the presentation where I tell you how many books we've checked out, how many people came through the doors, and how many residents attended our programs. Due to the pandemic, we had to calculate different numbers for you this year. So the library is reaching even more people, both virtually and in person. We have held online programming with over 6,907 views for our video programs on our YouTube and Facebook channels. Our Friday trivia on popular culture is very popular, and our Harry Potter quiz nearly beat our Jurassic Park quiz for the most respondents. I honestly thought Marvel and Star Wars would be a little bit higher, but obviously we have lots of Jurassic Park fans in our township. Unsurprisingly, ebook and the audiobook circulations have grown by 59% over last year, and they actually doubled for the months of April and May. We supplied materials during 1,876 curbside appointments from June on. The Elmville branch's picture was posted on Dyslexia Canada for their Market Red campaign, and the township and library were featured on CTV News and Barrie for that same campaign. In lieu of our Ladies' Night Out, we are currently hosting an online auction as a fundraiser, and there's still time to register and bid on some of the items that have been donated by our really supportive community. The auction ends on November 30th, so go check it out. Now that we are open, our usual numbers are rebounding. We actually had slightly more physical circulations in Midhurst for the month of October than last year, so that was a really good sign. We did remove most of our computers, so we went from 9 public computers to 3 public computers in order to social distance. We also made our appointments only half an hour long in order to sort of restrict the amount of people in the libraries due to regulations. And our computer appointments are remaining constant. So people are coming back in now that we are open, and that's really nice to see. Even though we kept the library going strong throughout 2020, it was not without our challenges, and these challenges will be present in 2021 as well. Obviously, this was not the year anyone planned for at all. STPL has proven to be very flexible and nimble and has made some of our challenges into opportunities. For example, when we made a digital branch the priority due to the physical branches being closed, staff stepped up and took training on digital services. We still need increased training on our digital products and need to add more digital collections and programming. This will cost increased licensing fees, which we have added to the base budget for 2021. I've already spoken out to council at previous meetings about the increased costs of ebooks and e-audiobooks and how they're up to 3 times more than the physical copies, which is something that is still an ongoing challenge for libraries across the country. STPL also is lacking the appropriate technology to properly implement digital programs, as well as education programs on technology for our residents. We have seen increased needs for materials and help from families and teachers too who are doing remote learning. One of our largest challenges is a lack of revenue for 2020, and that is projected to continue into at least most of 2021. When the libraries closed, we lost our room rental, which was our largest source of revenue, and we are also keeping all materials that are checked out quarantined for 5 days as per the regulations from the province. So that means we cannot charge late fees. And of course, every business organization is facing this other challenge of the increased cleaning costs when we have to continuously sanitize all surfaces in order to keep staff and our patrons safe. But we're looking at these challenges as opportunities for STPL to go above and beyond our comfort zone and become a better library system. We are using the master plan recommendations and creating a bridge strategic plan to get us through the pandemic and bring us out on the other side and even better situated for the future. We're looking at our physical and our digital collections, as well as programs to ensure that we are well balanced and meeting the needs of the residents. We are hosting the online auction and investigating other opportunities for fundraising because it is not likely that our normal methods of fundraising, which are in-person events, will be able to continue at least at the beginning of 2021. One thing I'm really happy to report on is that the CEOs of Penetangue Machine, Midland, and Springwater met and presented to Tiny Council regarding the contract that Tiny has with the 3 library systems for their residents. And we've come up with a solution that would provide greater access to Tiny residents, but also allow the 3 participating library systems a guaranteed income. So we would be able to budget each year what is coming in instead of taking a guess based on the number of members that we sign up. And so that will provide greater budget stability for the next 5 years for the length of this contract. So Tiny Council will be voting on that in the next couple of weeks. I am also super happy to announce that STPL is the recipient of the Ontario Trillium Foundation Seed Grant for almost $30,000 for our Creative Seniors program. This is based on our seniors programs that have been ongoing for over the last year. Unfortunately, due to COVID, this program will not be starting until hopefully in the spring because it is face-to-face, and we will be providing more information on it once it starts and able to actually promote it in the public once we get the money and restart the program. But it's almost $30,000 for our seniors, and we are very excited to move forward with that. I would like to give thanks to the Simcoe County Library Cooperative. Although working remotely, the co-op proved to be very responsive to their member libraries during the pandemic and closure. They immediately purchased more ebooks and e-audiobooks, recognizing that this is where the highest priority was. They were able to maintain all of our digital library systems and ensure that our digital branches had the resources we needed to provide library service. The co-op provides our library cataloging and circulation system, our website, our IT, computers and software, ebooks and e-audiobooks, our many databases and circulation system, our learning materials, book and material rotations to keep our collections fresh, our playaways, large print books, multilingual collection, training, and so much more. The co-op provides Springwater residents with all of this access to library service, and there is no way we would be able to provide it on our own. Just the amount of databases and the cost of that is beyond our budget. So we are very thankful that we have the co-op to help us provide service to our residents. Creating the budget for 2021 was difficult due to the uncertainties of the pandemic, and I'm sure everybody felt this. There are increases due to the additional licensing requirements for a digital branch and digital training needs, as well as needed technologies such as up-to-date computers instead of the county cast-offs, which are in all of our branches. Expenses are actually slightly less than in 2020 due to the recategorization in our WSIB payments, so we are able to save some money there. We also moved funds from promotions and library programming over to licensing for 2021 because that is the greatest need for 2021. We are asking for a slight increase in our operating budget due to that lack of revenue because we aren't able to rent our rooms or receive late fees, among others. So the numbers overall, our operating budget ask from Springwater is $758,069 with our projected expenditures totaling $863,719, which, as I mentioned, is actually $6,000 less than our operating budget for 2020. We are asking again this year for a children and youth librarian position, which would make the municipal contribution $837,053. So, most library systems now utilize system-wide specialized librarians in order to provide programming, collection development, and community partnerships in a systematic and efficient manner. STPL is asking for the Children and Youth Librarian, which will enable us to better deliver children's and teen programming to all of Springwater, both within our branches, on a digital platform, and for community outreach once we're allowed to do a little bit more of that once COVID is over. Our master plan, which was completed immediately prior to the pandemic, stated that our staffing levels were very low and that this children and youth librarian should be our first staff added. This position is responsible for coordinating all children and teens programming, working with children, teens, families, and caregivers, which often do include grandparents as well, acting as a liaison to schools and community partners, performing outreach, researching and purchasing materials, providing digital programs and support. The Children and Youth Librarian requires knowledge of educational practice, children and youth development, library trends and best practices, library theory such as intellectual freedom and equity, superior communication skills, and of course, amazing customer service. They would also be supervising summer students and volunteers and overseeing our successful summer reading program, among others. Multiple research supports children's programming in libraries. A specialized staff member who is knowledgeable in children and teen development, as well as literacy strategies and education for all ages, will promote reading and literacy and the love of books, which is necessary to thrive in the 21st century. Libraries are a key component of children's literacy and education, especially for the younger children prior to school age. According to the Association of Library Service to Children, 97% of parents believe children's library programs are important. 84% say that libraries boost children's love of reading and books, and 81% believe that libraries provide access to information and resources not available at home. A children and youth librarian who can work with teens will help with the lack of entertainment options for that age group in Springwater Township, which was a major concern during the master plan review and is one of the master plan's recommendations. Springwater is a growing community with 25% of residents under 19 years of age. The children and youth librarian would work also with the family members and caregivers, which greatly adds to their impact for Springwater residents. This is a long overdue position, especially for a library the size of Springwater with multiple branches. And now I'm going to briefly turn it over to Alyssa, who's going to speak to the need for children and youth librarians to help parents and schools, especially during the COVID pandemic.
All right, hi, good evening. I apologize, I just got kicked out, so I hope that I can stay in. Before I begin, I would like to preface that I am an elementary teacher with the Simcoe County District School Board, so I'm bringing that background knowledge to this presentation. As I'm sure you're all aware, families had to make a decision in the summer of whether or not to enroll their children in in-person learning or remote learning. Many families chose in-person learning, but as class sizes began rising due to collapsing classrooms and the numbers of COVID cases also began rising, many parents have chosen to pull their children from school. But now it's too late to enroll in the remote learning program. As of the November 11th Simcoe County District School Board program meeting, there have been no statistics collected for how many students this includes. So they don't know how many students have actually been pulled out and are not in person or in remote. So there's no way of knowing these numbers for sure, but I can give you a personal example of my daughter right here in Springwater. My daughter's in grade 5 at Hillsdale Elementary School, and she started the year in September with 25 students in her class. As of now, she is only one of 14, and that's just her classroom. Those are all students whose parents have pulled them from school. Parents in the Simcoe Muskoka Catholic District School Board are confused as the school board has been going back and forth about their learning plan for in-school versus remote or hybrid. So how are all these children learning? Where are they learning? Parents who are not trained teachers are now finding themselves scouring for resources. They want to know and they need to know how to teach their children. I mean, sure, a parent can go to a store and buy one of those resource books that cover math and language, but there are so many other subjects than just those two. This is where our libraries now have a brand new role. Springwater Library has always worked closely with parents who homeschool their children, but the pandemic has created an entirely new demographic. These parents aren't homeschooling, they are crisis schooling, and we need to respond. A children and youth librarian would know that government is taught in a grade 5 class, or growth and changes in animals is taught to science in grade 2, or grade 6 students have to explore space. A children and youth librarian would gather resources and support these parents. And let's be honest, this need isn't going away anytime soon. Additionally, while it is certainly not a new role, there is an increasing demand on the role the libraries now play, which is in the quantity of books going through the doors. Students are no longer allowed to sign out books from their school library due to COVID-19. So many families are turning to our Springwater libraries more than usual. Did you know there were more books signed out of the Midhurst branch in October of this year than October of last year? It's because the school libraries are closed and we're, quite frankly, their only resource. So our children and family are turning to our branches, and so we need that dedicated staff member to support and facilitate these children. Jody has already expressed why a children and youth librarian is important to Springwater Libraries, even without the pandemic. I'm merely here to add that with these new factors now, a children and youth librarian is now crucial. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Alyssa. And now it is always interesting to look at other systems similar to STPL and see how we compare. For the basis of these comparisons, we use the provincial statistics that are based upon a comprehensive annual survey that each library must complete each year in order to get our public library operating grant. STPL is in the 15,000 to 30,000 population range, which includes local systems such as Midland and Wasaga Beach, East Gwillimbury, and Clearview actually is in the under 15,000 population range, but because they are so similar to us based on township demographics, they are our neighbors, and they also have 3 branches, the same as us. We include them all the time. So STPL's performance on many of these measures has risen over the last 5 years. Previously, we were in the lower percentiles, but now we've been coming up. We still would like to be at the 50th percentile for funding, which we are not, and we'd like to be above that for our performance measures such as programming, which we are. Our funding per capita, so if you look at it, funding per person is very low at $39 per person a year. Yes, Wasaga Beach is lower than us at $34 per person a year, but also remember Springwater Library has 3 branches to staff, which requires additional staff costs, and Wasaga Beach is only staffing their 1 branch. So you would think that we should be ahead of them because we do have those additional staffing costs. Clearview, which has 3 branches, same as us, spends $53 per person. Patrons continuously comment on how friendly, welcoming, and helpful our staff are. Unlike Midland or Wasaga Beach, we have the responsibility of managing the 3 branches. Springwater remains at 19th out of 28 for employees per capita, and 8 of those above us actually have only 1 branch. In modern libraries, there's more than just checking out books. You need the specialized staff to provide the programming, to curate up-to-date physical and our digital collections, promote the library in the community, work with community organizations such as BIA, schools, and other organizations. Ontario Library Guidelines recommend that all library staff have formal library education training, such as their library technician diploma, and that every system have at least several members with the Masters of Library Science degree. Last year, we came before you and we asked for 2 library positions, the full-time children and youth librarian and the part-time digital librarian. Although both positions are still needed, due to circumstances, we thought it would be better to only bring forward the children and youth librarian position this year. This position would help us navigate the pressures of COVID, would help us work with families, which includes children of all ages, teens, parents, families, their caregivers. Grandparents are often the caregivers we see in the libraries during the day, and improve our programs to a professional level. Most libraries our size and some smaller have this position, and we honestly should have had a specific children's librarian many years ago. COVID demonstrated how important libraries are to the community. While under lockdown, the demand for library service increased. Parents needed assistance with remote schooling. Seniors wanted connection with the community, and everyone was looking for links to accurate information. Libraries are the one place everyone in the community can come together, whether it is online or in person. And the reason STPL is so invaluable to our community is our staff. One of our patrons commented regarding our virtual programs. We just wanted you to know today that during Storytime, Ronan was blowing you big kisses as soon as he saw you on the screen. This virtual Storytime has been so great for our children during this time of uncertainty. For Ronan, he knows all the songs and now does most of the actions to all the songs. It is familiarity for him and is helping him with his language. Rory enjoys all the English stories, but the pigeon ones are by far our favorite. Thank you again for keeping the consistency of Storytime during this challenging time. We look forward to Tuesdays when we know a new Storytime will be posted. In order to continually improve and serve Springwater residents, more staff are needed. A children and youth librarian will allow us to reach families during COVID and beyond. Our libraries have been open this entire time, and we will continue to provide the excellent service Springwater residents deserve and require. Thank you in advance for supporting both our operating budget and our program change. Thank you, and I'm now eager to hear your questions.
Thank you very much, ladies, for the presentation and the review of the year. Okay, I will open it up to council for questions, comments. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Because I do sit on the board for the library, I really just wanted to pass along my congratulations to the board in general, that they've done such a fabulous job this year with all the trouble and COVID and having to pivot so quickly. It's so impressive. Thrilled to be part of the board and just wanted to acknowledge them publicly for doing such a fabulous job.
Thank you. I certainly echo that. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just have a question for Jody. What's the difference? Last year you asked for a child and youth coordinator, and this year child and youth librarian, because the total wage is just slightly higher than 12 grand from last year to this year. If you can just explain to me the difference.
Jody.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Chapman. We had gone back and forth last year between coordinator and librarian, and we ended up, it was basically more just a nomenclature because librarian is respected for that position in the library world. There are same duties, same requirements. The difference in the pay scale is last year we brought it forward as a 10-month annualized position. And this year we asked for the 12-month position because every year council has seemed to want that 12-month figure. And we are hoping that we would be able to start with that position, if approved, as quickly as possible in January. So that would be the difference between the 10 months to the 12 months, and then just nomenclature to make it a little bit more recognizable for what the duties actually would entail in the community. And the pay scale was put onto the township's pay grid based upon the level of education required and their duties and the competency, skills, and levels that they would need.
Follow on, Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I didn't realize the 10 and 12 months. Thank you for that. I do think that this is supported. We do need a child and youth librarian, especially with the pandemic that we're in and the new hub that we're building. I think we need to be proactive, hire before that new building is built. And that way our programs basically will be already in place. I also wanted to know, is there other branches who have this position?
Jody?
Do you mean other library systems? For example, Clearview has a children's librarian. Ramara, which is much smaller than us, has a children's librarian. Midland has a children's librarian. Barrie has a whole entire children's department, but we can't compare with them, but we do have a lot of our residents utilize Barrie Library as well. So they do make comparisons, unfortunately, and it doesn't always look good upon us. Wasaga Beach has a children's programmer. Collingwood does, Innisfil does, New Tech does, so East Gwillimbury does. So for the most part, we are one of the only ones our size, and even compared to some of the smaller systems, who does not have a children's librarian. And this position would work at all three branches. So once we were able to open up to the public for face-to-face, they'd be going to all three branches doing face-to-face programs, in the meantime, doing digital programs so everybody across the township could participate.
Thank you. I did check out other branches and most of them were coordinators. That's why I was asking. Thank you.
Councillor Cabral?
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Allen. First off, I'd like to acknowledge what a great job Springwater Township Public Library has done this past year. There were obviously some significant hurdles to overcome, and they did a remarkable job of doing that, and I also congratulate you on the award. I'm struggling, I guess, with this at this particular time, given the fact that we're still under pandemic, we're still under the COVID-19. There's certain things coming on the horizon that may mitigate those factors and let things go on a little bit more. I'm having more difficulty simply because I've received a number of emails and comments from people regarding taxation. Some folks out there don't feel that council has done enough, that Springwater Township, I guess for lack of a better word, plays in their perspective by maybe a different set of rules because so many of them are out of work and struggling with the increase at the food bank. I guess my other concern is that with COVID-19, the library may not very well be able to operate the way it used to for some time yet to come. And as much as I'd like to say this is a wonderful program, and I'm not suggesting that it's not, just based on what I've been hearing from my constituents as far as money and as far as them being unemployed and an increase of people using the food bank, I'm really struggling with looking at putting another position into the library, particularly at this juncture in time. So as much as the library is doing great work, I do have one question that I would like to ask with respect to all of the online offerings that are out there. Is it specific to the residents that they have to input their library card to avail themselves of these particular programs, or are Springwater residents able to access programs at the Barrie Public Library or at the Midland Public Library, or for that matter, a library out of the city of Toronto online? Or do you have to be a member of the library?
Judy?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cabral. I cannot speak for the other library systems. I honestly haven't gone on to avail myself to try to see what they're offering and or if I could get on. For most of our programs at the moment, because they're video programs, anybody can watch them through our YouTube and Facebook channels. Our Zoom program, we did take names, so we cross-referenced that with our patrons, and we had a really good show of patrons who did that. We have been able, and for example, I know Toronto Public Library at the beginning stepped up and made a lot of things available. Many authors and publishers made all sorts of programs available to everybody. A lot of the educational programs that normally charge for schools made theirs available. And what the libraries did and what Springwater did was, in order for parents to save time, we put them all together. So we were that resource base for all of these programs besides the ones that we did. So not only were we doing our own programs, we were curating the ones from outside to make them available to our residents, because we couldn't provide, for example, a virtual museum trip, but we could make it available to our patrons. And we have been seeing great responses from making all those available and helping everybody out and getting them the information they desired. We really don't at this moment have a way of restricting our online programs to only our patrons. For example, even with our local history database, it's a database that is open. It's more of a website. Our regular databases, for example, Ancestry now, which is available online, and our, say, Mango Languages, those are restricted solely to our patrons, and you do need to input a library card in order to access them from home. If I may, I'd also like to speak to your other point, because we all recognize that this is a time of great financial uncertainty. The library board, myself included, half of my staff also do pay taxes for Springwater residents. So I am recognizing that by asking for this position, my own tax bill will increase. And there are a lot of families who are struggling. This position could help with that. For example, due to COVID, our early on centers, which operated out of the libraries, and we had the largest satellite center for all of North Simcoe, which greatly helped in the Elmville ward, Elmville area, especially for those younger residents who did not have access to other services. And we no longer have, the early on program is no longer doing their satellite services. So those families do not have access to that screening and that educational help and that education training on how to be a parent, or how to be a better parent, how to deal with issues that have come up that they normally would have had access to through our partnership with Early On. And this children and youth librarian can help take that slack and provide that access and those educational materials and that help that normally would be provided by some of our partners who are feeling this as well. So even though it is an ask, and we know the timing is not always perfect right now, it is something that can greatly help offset some of those people that do need greater help and have problems finding it because of the lack of support right now due to COVID.
Follow on, Mayor Allen?
Yes, Councillor Cabral?
Yes, I just know that the programs that you currently have in existence and the programs that were put in place last year, would I be correct in assuming that the Springwater Public Library presently are providing many of the programs that this particular individual would be undertaking to do at some level, given that they are being done right now remotely?
Jody?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. We would actually be able to do more programs, better targeted programs. For example, we want to do curriculum boxes to help out those who are doing remote learning. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have the staff time and we don't have the expertise to go through and match these ideas that we have to the Ontario curriculum. Whereas an actual children and youth librarian would be able to do that because they would have that familiarity. Also, too, we are not able to offer book clubs right now because we don't have the staff time. Doing these video programs takes more staff time than our normal face-to-face programs do. And so staff are struggling keeping up with some of these programs. We're actually dropping our Crafting with Kathy down to once a month in January, just because we're sort of overwhelmed. We threw everything at the table to get us through COVID. And now that we're doing online programming, plus we're open, staff are feeling the pinch in that. So having this programmer, this librarian, would really be able to take on some of these programs that otherwise we are going to sort of step back a little bit. We're doing more monthly programs instead of weekly programs, for example, as well as add in that educational component, that working with the community, working with the lower income families, that is needed and that we cannot do at all right now.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Through you to Jody. Thank you, Jody. You always give very informative reports, so I appreciate that. Just a question for you, if I may. Your technology and minor capital budget, you had $10,100 in 2020. You spent $1,670, and you're asking for another $10,000. You had mentioned that your computers or laptops were maybe not up to the quality that you need. Would you be able to use some of these funds that you didn't lose last year? And if your budget's approved, you'd have close to $19,000 the way I read it. Would you be able to use that money for the technology that you need to, or are you planning to use it for something else?
Jody?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hannah. Some of that money has now been spent for the technology and minor capital, so it will not be, there won't be that huge pot left at the end of the year. We will be spending money on upgrading technology. We actually applied for the Resilient Community Fund grant for new technology to purchase computers, iPads, and the Adobe Digital licensing so we could do the actual digital editing that we need to. We were supposed to find out the beginning of November. I checked the account today and it's still in process. So fingers crossed we can get that, and that will help us greatly improve our technology. But yes, a couple of new computers as well as the Adobe licenses is definitely on the budget for 2021, and that will be the first purchase once our budget is approved.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And through you, my first question is pertaining to the early on programming, and understanding that most facilities or most programs have gone virtual. Is the early on programming offering a virtual capacity now that they are not doing the remote visits?
Jody?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. Yes, early on is providing some virtual programs, and the library is helping to promote those as much as we can. I actually did receive an email today from Early On North Simcoe about partnerships with them and plans for moving forward in 2021. Mm-hmm. Springwater is unique in that we are served by two different Early Ons. We're served by Early On North Simcoe and Early On Barrie. And I have found that Early On North Simcoe has been stepped up and has really done some wonderful things for virtual programming, but one program a month is quite different from 2 full days in the branch, interacting with the parents, educating them, offering screening, offering different resources. They just can't do the same amount virtually, whereas if we had the Children and Youth Librarian that we did have available, it would help go a long way to solving those needs.
Thank you. And then the understanding that when the pandemic allows for us to have in library gatherings, the early on programming would then recommence, or has that, so it hasn't been terminated. It's not a permanent void in the system. It is simply a temporary due to COVID.
Jody?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, our intention is to work again with Early On. I don't foresee that partnership going by the wayside. We've actually sort of piggybacked on Early On way more than we should have, as they have offered programs that technically should have been programs that we have been offering, especially at the Elmville branch. For example, their Getting Ready for Kindergarten program, which in the majority of other libraries is actually offered by library staff instead of Early On. So if we did have this librarian position, they would be working closely with Early On, as well as bringing those programs to our other 2 branches that are not availed of the programs because Early On does not spend the same amount of time in Midhurst and Minising. They spend no time in Minising and only half a day in Midhurst, for example. So we don't reaching that whole entire half of the township as well. So the Children's Youth Librarian would help with that.
Thank you. And just one more, Mayor Allen.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And understanding that this influx would be experienced throughout the entire county, the Simcoe County Collaborative, have they put together any programming or assistance? Because I can see this being something that other libraries would be not specific to that position, but finding a way to fulfill our commitment to our residents virtually.
Judy?
The Simcoe County Library Cooperative, you mean? They have actually been looking at adding to our digital resources. So they've been going through their budget, trying to figure out, for example, adding video streaming, adding LinkedIn Learning, which is an amazing learning opportunity, which we cannot afford. It's $5,000. I mean, I so wanted to bring it forward, but that was not that would have been a huge increase to our budget. So I had to sort of say, no, we're not ready for that yet. So the Library Cooperative has been looking at that side, bringing all of these digital resources so we can increase our digital branch, increase their programming. They would help us with receiving the licenses, for example. So when we buy the new computers, they will help us with getting the Word, the Microsoft licenses, the Adobe licenses, probably at a smaller cost than what we would be paying if we were doing it by ourselves. As for programming, we have been talking about doing training and getting together to share ideas, but programming has always been more the purview of the individual library systems instead of the cooperative. They've been they've helped us when needed, and computer support, digital support has been absolutely amazing, but they're more looking at how they can support the digital branch through providing the resources we then need to do the programming.
And third question, unless there's other members of council.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And then in speaking with colleagues in education or in early childhood education specifically, the salary being offered to this position, can you explain how or why, for example, a DECE in a classroom, a ECE member working at a nursery or cooperative, the pay grade here seems to be much higher than someone who would be offering programming. So I'm just curious as to how or why this pay grade is significantly higher than that of others in the education field.
If I may, what's a DCE?
So I don't know, maybe Chair or Vice Chair Shanahan can speak more. So an ECE is an early childhood educator, and a DECE.
Oh, I thought it was DCE. Okay, right.
DECE, yeah. So just, I don't know, maybe I'll refer to I don't understand the difference between a DECE and an ECE. I think it's just that you're in a kindergarten classroom, or I'm not sure what the difference is, but the salary does seem to be higher and significantly higher than that starting wage of that was approved by the board, whether it be Simcoe Muskoka Catholic or Simcoe Muskoka Public. So I'm just curious as to that.
Go ahead, Jody.
Okay, I'll start off and then I'll let Vice Chair Shanahan add anything to it. First off, this is not an early childhood position. This is more equivalent to a teacher or even more of like the higher level in the school board position. It requires a master's degree in children's and library science, and that degree teaches the students to, first off, all about child and teen development. So not just ECE, because this is working all the way up to 18-year-olds as well. Talking about how to curate, how to evaluate, how to find all the digital as well as physical materials, how to work with them, how to build programs, how to analyze a collection, all the evaluative piece. Also, how to have all the library foundations, so our intellectual freedom, our equity, our digital divide, all of those theories that make up the entire basis of library services. So it's more of the understanding that umbrella programming. They're responsible for all programming. They're responsible for the collection development. They're responsible for meeting with parents, like dealing with parents, dealing with staff. And we did look at our pay grid when we were doing this position last year. And based on their responsibilities and on their education level, it was came in on level 5 of the pay grid, and the pay grid has 10 levels. So that was where it was, and that would be where that staffing is. So it's not your assistant who's on the desk. They're the ones who would be more in charge of everything. They didn't get the higher level because they're not supervisory. They don't have library assistants under them, just the students and the volunteers. But it is more that teaching, that education, the how to put everything together, those higher level thinking competencies that are not typical of somebody who just comes out with a community college ECE. And Alyssa, I don't know if you had anything else to add to that.
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Yeah, everything Jody said is correct. And I mean, if you wanted to quite simply put it down in the difference in the pay grid is just looking quite frankly at a pay grid, and that an ECE is a 2-year college diploma, a teacher is 2 university degrees, and this children and youth librarian is the university degree plus a master's degree. So it's just moving up that pay grid.
Okay, question, the $30,000 seniors grant, is that what you budgeted, 31,500, or is that a bit of a windfall that was unexpected? And to what extent can we hope for further grants contained within the budget?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. That was a windfall. It does help us save a little bit on our programming money, which, as I mentioned earlier, we're able to save a little bit on programming and put it into our licensing. So we can save a little bit there. And this grant, like I said, we can't really publicize it yet because we haven't started it yet due to COVID, but I did get permission to tell you this evening, and it is for our Creative Seniors program. So it's going to be bringing artists into our seniors and working with them and taking that creative programming a next step. It also pays for the staff time to work on the programming, because finding the artists, doing the artwork, we are supposed to be doing field trips to the McMichael and the McLaren art galleries with it. So renting a bus, which obviously is part of the holdup right now due to COVID, because you don't want to put seniors on a bus. That's just not a good idea. So when we're looking at this, we weren't quite sure if the grant was coming in. We decided to take some of the money from programming anyways, and hope we could use that from the grant, because all of our seniors programs now will be funded. The seniors program will be funded out of that grant, but it is pretty much a windfall. As I mentioned, we did apply for the Resilient Communities Fund. So I'm hoping that, like I said, fingers crossed, that will really help. And we are more proactively looking at grants. The Trillium Foundation grant, the cutoff for population is 20,000. So we're right on the edge. So we'll have to get any more in next year before the next census comes out. But we can look at other grants as well and find out what other funding opportunities. We are also looking at our Friends group. The board has mandated to move forward with that, and that'll be doing some fundraising activities once we get that up and running by the end of 2021. Our online auction has been really successful. We already have over like $3,500 in bids on that, which for the first time ever doing it is really, really well, seeing as we weren't able to have our Ladies Night Out fundraiser in the spring as we had anticipated. So the board is very actively involved in looking out for other funding opportunities to help us.
Okay, and the broadband portable Wi-Fi players that you were able to check out, are any more of those budgeted? You had said they're very popular.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to you. We hadn't budgeted any more for 2021. We do have, I want to say 13 available right now. And we do pay the internet on them, which is $50 a month per device. So that is beginning to get quite high. We added another extra one this year due to we had asked for a couple more for the 2020 budget, and then we did purchase a couple extra ones just due to the pandemic. And we also had to make one available to staff because honestly, it was taking 10 hours to upload the Storytime video, which is not a good use of staff because her internet was so poor living out in the rural area of Springwater. So we did provide a hotspot to our staff member in order to make that 10-hour time limit go down to 10 minutes, which is a much more efficient use of our time. But we are going to be looking at what happens in the future, and for under this technology money that Councillor Hannah pointed out, If we do see a great need for it continuing, then we will most likely add a couple more again. But I also know there is now a good conversation going on with the township, the county, and the province for broadband. So we're sort of taking a step back and seeing what happens from that as well.
So one more question from me. The hours that, can you compare the hours of operation, so to speak, in quotation marks, to what they were pre-COVID for us, please?
Thank you. And to you, yes, our Midhurst branch is open the same as pre-COVID, with the exception we're closing half an hour earlier for cleaning. Our scheduled cleaner only comes in twice a week, so staff have taken on those additional duties, and we didn't have it in the budget to really extend their time an extra half hour to clean and wipe everything down. So instead of closing at 7, for example, on Tuesday and Thursday, they close at 6:30, so they can spend that half hour wiping down every surface and sanitizing everything, disinfecting, and then 4:30 on Wednesdays and Fridays, for example. Elmville is the same, except we are currently closed the Mondays. And the reason for that is I am keeping staff in each bubble. So staff that work in Midhurst who are not interacting with staff who work in Elmville. We normally had staff working, like, say, 1 day a week in one branch and 2 days a week in another branch. For safety purposes, they're not doing that anymore. So I didn't have the staffing available for the Monday. Minising is not open. We're only open the 1 day for curbside, and then staff go in for another time period to coordinate curbside because they have to set up all those appointments in advance and pull all the books. And so we've been able to utilize those hours both for saving money, so we could make up for the loss of revenue, as well as putting one of those days, because Minising was open 4 days. So 1 day we are utilizing those hours for a cost saving benefit. And then the other day we are using it for digital programming to offset that, because digital programming takes a lot more time. And we still have a few members doing curbside at our other branches, which also is a little bit more labor intensive than just regular opening. We hope to open Minising as soon as possible because it's part of the community center. We don't have permission yet, although Jeff and I have been in communication regarding that, but with numbers going high at the moment, it probably will not be anytime in the next couple of weeks. But we try to keep our hours as close to possible as they were before. And I know not all libraries have been able to do that. So I consider us really lucky that we have been able to bring all staff back and stay open as much as possible.
So with the staff who aren't manning Minising, they're redeployed elsewhere?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, they are.
Yep. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any other questions, council? Okay, again, ladies, thank you for the presentation and the thorough discussion. CAO Schmidt, can you just review what we had been talking about, the motions that we're going to be starting to do and how we're going to be handling that, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this evening, you'll see on the agenda that under 5.1, there is a motion, or two motions actually, with regards to the Springwater Public Library. And so really what we're asking for is either for council to move those motions tonight and support those motions, which would essentially move the budget forward for the Springwater Public Library. With that said, there is still an opportunity to make changes, which we've set aside December 9th as part of the budget deliberation process to make final changes. So if council was to move these motions tonight, the intent would be is that they would flow through to December 9th, if you will, and then further conversations and or amendments could be made at that time. And if changes weren't made on December 9th, then essentially what you see tonight would be presented in the final budget on December 16th for council's approval.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, council, of that process? Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to CAO Schmidt. Just for my clarification, if moving these forward does, and with all the other presentations we're going to hear, moving them forward to the end doesn't mean we're approving them or not approving them. We're just moving them forward so we can discuss them with the final day. Because if we start I guess my concern is we start approving everything. By the time we get to the last few presentations, we might not have any funds left to approve anything. So I want to be clear, by moving this forward, we're not approving anything. We're just moving them forward. We can discuss them later and then set our priorities and then make any approvals we choose to do. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's what CAO Schmidt was just communicating, that he's not.
I believe you're correct, Mayor, but I just wanted clarification, please, so there was no confusion on my part.
Okay, CAO Schmidt, can you just,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Hannah. That is correct, Councillor Hannah. So at any time between now and December 16th, which is the date that council is slated to approve the budget, changes can be made. So the idea is that tonight you're receiving the information that's being presented. Subject to that, if you could make a change to one of these motions, you could amend the motion if you're against it, if you will, or you want to consider something else. That can be brought forward as an amendment tonight. But the intent is to your point, is to receive these, bring them forward to a final discussion on December 9th, once we have gone through the full budget cycle for 2021. And to your point, I think council needs to see what other items are being presented for 2021 and make a final decision on December 9th as to what you'd like to see come forward for final approval on December 16th.
Councillor Cabral? You're still muted there, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you. I did push the button, I guess not hard enough. On these items here, I guess I have two questions. Well, one question and then a comment. Will these two recommendations come up together? If so, I would ask that they be split. And the second point I just wanted to kind of bring up is, from my standpoint, I understand that by moving the recommendations forward, there would possibly be further debate on it. I hate to say it, but I just can't support additional cost for staff at this juncture, merely because of COVID-19 and the uncertainty that we're going to be facing coming down the road. And also, as I said, with the comments I've been receiving from my constituents and even neighbors, just people talking to, that they're struggling. And anyway, that's kind of a comment there, but also want to make mention that it was bad enough that the provincial government had to just recently give us a bit of a handout because they recognized that a lot of the municipalities were going to have a shortfall because of COVID. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I'd like to split them because I can support one. I don't think it would be fair for me to pretend to support the other one now and then later on at another meeting turn around and turn it down. So I just wanted to kind of put that forward. If we could split the two, I would appreciate that.
Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth?
Through you to Councillor Cabral. They are listed as two separate motions on the agenda, so they will be dealt with separately.
Okay, so the first one on your agenda is 5.1, which can I have a mover and seconder for that to get it on the floor, please? Councillor Cabral and Deputy Mayor Coghlan. And that is that the presentation from the Springwater Public Library regarding the 2021 budget request be received, and that the 2021 library operating budget request in the amount of $758,069 be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2021 budget. Is there any further discussion before we vote on that, Council? Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Marilyn. And I share in Councillor Cabral's concern also that I too want to streamline the process of the budget here this evening. And I think we've had a wholesome discussion about this. My question would then be, understanding that this the library is a department within arm's reach, but a department within the municipality, and they obviously have been under the same constraints placed on other departments through COVID. So the COVID relief that we have received, is that possible? Is there a possibility to extend that? Because while I don't support a $78,000 position, I do understand and acknowledge the need and the turnaround that the staff have had to do. So I don't want to leave them, I don't want to say empty-handed or in another predicament for the year moving forward, but I also don't want to give the false impression that I do fully support this moving forward. So it's not that I'm asking for a compromise. I'm just asking if there is an opportunity to provide relief to staff so that they can continue to move forward in what they are offering to our residents, because it is phenomenal. But as I agree that at this time, it's not a position that I can fully support.
Okay, I'll clarify that the resolution recommendation we're dealing with is the base budget. It's not the extra position. That's the next resolution. So we're talking about the base budget here. Okay? So are there any further discussion on the recommendation I just read, which was on the $758,000 base budget? Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the next recommendation. I need a mover and a seconder to get that on the floor, please. Councillor Cabral and Councillor Moore. And that recommendation is that the Springwater Public Library program change PC11, the Children and Youth Librarian, in the amount of $78,984 be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2021 budget. So discussion now with respect to this. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Jody Delgado, I guess it is, Claire. This might be a stupid question, but is there any way of reaching out to the school boards that has the expertise with these librarian and create some kind of a curriculum that we could take back and use in order to put this on for the different age groups? I share the sentiments of Councillor Cabral, given the times that we're in. And if there was any way of reaching out to any of the school boards to help us out with this, I'd be in favor, because I don't care to spend any more money than I have to this year. I know you do a phenomenal job. I know that. I hear it all the time. Been a big supporter, but this year going forward, given the circumstances, you got to take that into consideration. So can we reach out to the school boards? Would they help us with something like this? That's my question. Thank you.
Jody, please.
Okay, once again, I'll start off and then pass over to Alyssa. I have been in contact with a couple of the school librarians in our township, and they're interested in helping, but for them, they're so overwhelmed right now with all the changes in schooling that basically they sort of want us to come in and help make their lives easier. I've also sent a couple of emails to different members of the school board, or both trustees, and to different people, and I honestly haven't heard back from them. So trying to reach out, I had an email with the principal at one of our local schools, and she's like, we want to do something. What can you do for us? They're not really able to bring anything back unless we can go to them already. And honestly, my staff as well are overwhelmed with everything we're doing, and having expertise isn't in place yet. So this position would put that expertise in place to help reach out to the school. But it's pretty much going to be the onus is on us. And Alyssa can talk about more about what's actually going on and how better to do that.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Ritchie. As far as reaching out to the school board for a curriculum, the school boards do not create the curriculum. The Ministry of Education creates the curriculum. So anybody, including everyone in this meeting, if you wanted to know what the Ontario curriculum was, you go to the Ministry of Education's website, and it lists the science curriculum for all the grades, social studies, and whatnot. That is all that is given to parents and to educators. Teachers are trained on how to facilitate that information and use resources that are within schools, but teachers need those resources for the students who are still in school. The greatest problem right now that we're seeing is the parents who have pulled their children and are homeschooling them. They do not have access to any of these resources. They don't have access to what's in the schools. All they can do is look at the Ministry of Education website and say, you need to teach your child ABCD by the end of the year for this subject. And they don't know where to even start looking and where to gather resources, where to gather books from, and especially because school libraries are closed. And that's why they are turning to our Springwater libraries and coming in and saying, my kids in grade 3, what am I supposed to teach them? Or what can I use to teach them? And so that's where that children and youth librarian would know, okay, grade 3 science is plants. Let me take you to our plant section. This isn't buying new resources. This is resources and books and digital resources that we already have. It's about cultivating and supporting all of these parents who right now are kind of stuck and they don't have a place to go. And so it's just about supporting all of these parents in Springwater who are now clueless of what to do and how to teach their children, because they don't want their children to fall behind in their education, in their educational career.
Thank you for that. Further discussion? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would really like to see this position at least moved to the December meeting. I don't want to completely squash this right now. I need a bit of time to think about exactly what Alyssa is saying. And it's so important right now that we do support our parents. And I think we need to maybe think a bit differently about the library itself and the staff in the library. I agree that it's a bit expensive, but I think we need that talent right now to support our parents. So I would like to see this position at least moved to the December discussion.
Okay, thank you for that. A comment before I go to Councillor Ma, and that is, it seems like we're asking for the Cadillac right away. Is there a way of going part way through, halftime, maybe not as bridge the situation that we're in so that we could provide some services for this gap, but not to the level that you're maybe proposing to start off with?
I don't have permission from the board to say this, so this may be a bit of a shock to them, but if it's a choice between not getting the position or getting a position at 25 hours, Jeff would have to run the numbers for us. I think we would be able to move forward with this position at 25 hours. That would be 5 days a week, so we could still maintain coverage for our families that would need it.
So what would, and would that be the same degree of qualification of person, or could we fulfill the service with somewhat less of the qualification? And give me an idea of what that would equate to in dollars compared to the $78,000.
To you, Mr. Mayor, it looks like Jeff is frantically trying to do the calculations right now. I sort of sprang this on him. And like I said, I don't have board permission. The board was fully behind bringing this full-time position once again, because we did ask for it last year as well. I would still like the master's degree librarian. As we said, it is very, very, they need a high education level in order to do what is needed right now. It would be the same thing, if you'll excuse the analogy, of asking, instead of having your dental hygienist do your root canal, but you would have your dentist, or instead of having the receptionist do your taxes, you actually ask for the accountant. We don't want an ECE or somebody with the less education and less experience who doesn't have the expertise and the competencies to do what we are asking them and need them to do for our residents right now. So we would still need that higher level. But we could slightly break down some of the hours to make it a little bit more feasible, because it is an ask.
Councillor Cabral and Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Oh no, then I had Councillor Ma and then Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Alan. I do agree with Councilor Moore moving this to the December 2nd, just to think more on it. I totally support the position. I have a hard time also with the range. I also think it's important that we have it, especially now through COVID and lots of mental health going on with our kids. They've already went through that between March and July, being out of school and online schooling. So I'm caught in between on my thought. I think we need it. I also think if we went with a coordinator later on doing a librarian, I think just with the training, we'd still have to hire someone with a bachelor degree behind them instead of a coordinator. I would imagine I'm probably correct. So in the long run, it might be just a waste of our taxpayers' money to go for the coordinator and then later on as a librarian. So I would support this and move into December 2nd.
Thank you, Councillor Cabral and Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Actually, my niece homeschools her kids and has for a number of years, and they have organizations and support groups in place that help them acquire different materials and whatnot for their lesson plans. And of course, they get certain materials from the school boards as well. So I guess my question is for the Vice Chair, Shanahan. Does the Simcoe County Board of Education or the Simcoe Catholic District Board of Education, I suspect they both would have parents who have homeschooled and been in contact with them over the years. Are you saying that there's no support from either school board being provided to parents that are homeschooling their children in the short term right now versus those who are homeschooling their children for their own specific reasons themselves? I just kind of find that hard to believe.
Alyssa Shanahan, please.
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. Yes, you are correct. I cannot speak on behalf of the Catholic School Board, as that is not who I work for, so I don't want to speak on behalf of that. But surely for the Simcoe County District School Board, unfortunately, that is correct, that if a parent has decided to remove their child from school, they cannot enroll them in any remote learning, so they are left to their own devices of homeschooling. There are certainly homeschooling programs. Homeschooling has been around for decades, and I know the library has already formed bonds with certain with different families that homeschool without COVID-19. Just that's their own personal familial choice. So there certainly are those organizations that exist, but there is a massive influx of families who are, and that's why I said in my presentation, this isn't homeschooling, it's crisis schooling, because these are families that want their children back in school, that hopefully will be back in school maybe in the spring, maybe next year, start again next September kind of thing. But in the meantime, they do not want their children to fall behind, but there are no resources. I was speaking to a family here in Hillsdale yesterday. They have two daughters, grades 4 and grade 6. They enrolled their children in school in Hillsdale, and the father in his 40s suffered from a heart attack. They decided to pull their daughters to keep their numbers low, and they tried to ask the school board that due to these extenuating circumstances and with their father having a heart attack, if they could please get their children enrolled in the remote learning through the school board, and the answer was no in writing. So this mother is now, this is why she reached out to me yesterday. She's frantically trying to homeschool and figure out what to teach her two daughters in grade 4 and grade 6, as it's just not safe for her to take them to school. So unfortunately, we're kind of in this limbo, and there's a void, and those people are turning to the libraries to look for some resources and look for some books to help them teach their children during this crisis time.
Just a quick follow-up, Mayor Allen. Could you also just advise then, when they're taking their kids out of school, my understanding is that there are specific cutoff dates where you have to advise them whether you're going to send your kid to school or whether you want to avail yourself of the remote learning. So would these be people that said they were going to send their kids to school on that particular cutoff date and then have reversed their decision is what I'm hearing here?
Alyssa?
Yes, through you, Mayor Allen, that is correct. Due to extenuating circumstances, rising numbers, whatever it may be, they have chosen to change their answer and remove their children from school. Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin, and then Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. And again, I think that my point would just be that this is a permanent fix. This is a permanent position. And often when we speak to this position, the requirements or the need for this position is stemming from COVID. And I think that while it would be nice to have a qualified or the librarian, the technician accompanying that position, the school boards themselves are reacting to this situation similarly. And I'm sure Vice Chair Shanahan can attest to the fact that there are many unqualified teachers in our schools more now than ever before, teaching our children. So I think that if we're respectful of the budget constraints and maybe provide this opportunity, we may not have it in the budget to have a library technician component to it, but we may be able to have an opportunity to provide the service still to our residents, similar to what was offered through early on, without having the technician component.
Any comment with respect to that, Jody or Alyssa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to the Deputy Mayor. This is still the same position that we'd asked for for last year and were turned down. And we asked for that without COVID. So we still do need that position because it's not just early on, it's also working with the high school, it's working with the families. And in order to do the more advanced library work, you need that good library foundation. And it's just a matter of your expertise and your competencies and your experience. And regardless of COVID, we would still be asking, the library board would still be asking for this position. COVID just made it even more important. But we would still be asking for the position with these competencies. And it's just the libraries now need professional specialized staff in order to fully fulfill their mandate. Library world is changing. That's the one constant. They're changing so fast. The technology is changing. What our residents expect is changing. And you need somebody who has the expertise and the education to keep up with that.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. I have to go back to our earlier conversation that Councillor Cabral brought up, and that's the fact that other municipalities that have libraries, that have maybe these people on staff, there's nothing to stop, what I understand, there's nothing to stop people from Springwater to accessing those and getting information and help through those agencies. And I have to support the idea that we have a lot of people that are at work right now. We have people that are asking for money from the federal government, from the provincial government, whether they're working in stores or bartenders, whatever, those people aren't working right now. They're our taxpayers. We put off allowing people not to have to pay their taxes up until June of this year. Now they have to pay their taxes. We're coming forward with another budget that's got significant increases if it's all approved. So while I agree that this may be something that we need in the future, I'm just sorry, Jody, I don't believe this is the time. And I think we have to make tough decisions, and this is going to be one of them for me. So thank you.
Okay. All right. So I read the recommendation. Ready for the vote. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. Opposed? 4 opposed? 1, 2. That is carried. Oh, wait a minute. We're getting the cards.
I think we're missing some bodies here, Mayor Allen. Deputy Coughlin.
I'm looking for her on the, I think she bounced off again. Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, this by voting in favor of this tonight pushes it to December, where we can further discuss it, and that's where the final answer, the final axe comes down then.
That's correct. The final decision comes down then. That is correct.
Thank you.
That is correct. Clerk Ainsworth, oh, there's Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
She's back.
Did you have something to say, Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. Yes. So the motion did pass. As Councillor Ritchie stated, it would go to the December 9th session for final consideration.
Okay.
As you've called the vote, that is final unless somebody asks for a recorded vote.
Okay. All right, ladies, thank you for the presentation.
Sorry, I'll be asking for a recorded vote then, because I'm not sure what kind of numbers we had with the deputy not being present.
Okay, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. Would anybody like the motion reread?
Yes, please. Yes. Yes.
The motion was moved by Councillor Cabral and seconded by Councillor Moore and states that the Springwater Public Library Program Change, PC number 11, Children and Youth Librarian, in the amount of $78,984 be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2021 budget. When I state Mayor Allen, I believe Deputy Mayor Coughlin had her request to speak card.
Oh, I didn't see that. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn, and my apologies for my internet. I just wanted to reiterate that I unfortunately missed the end of that conversation, but I am assuming that as members of council have asked that it be continuing the process. Even if I can't support it at that point, I have no problem allowing the conversation to continue until then.
Okay, that's the nature of the motion. And so we're about to take a recorded vote with respect to that.
Thank you. When I call your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral,
Regretfully, no.
Councillor Hannah,
No.
Councillor Chapman,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin,
You muted?
Sorry, just let me back in again. I'm going to try and get it on my phone, but yes, sorry, yes.
and Mayor Allen.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we are at 5.2, which is Severn Sound Environmental Association, tab 11 in your binders. I now call upon representatives from the SSEA, being the board chair, Stefan Walma, and the executive director, Julie Cayley. Hopefully you're still tuned in. I'm looking for your names, but oh, there they are. Faces, yes. Oh, and there's Stefan. Welcome.
Thank you. Your worship, members of council, big thank you for your time this evening. We're cognizant that it is a long evening, so we're going to push through our slides. And with that, I'll flip things over to our executive director, Julie Cayley. Julie.
Thank you. And thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, Council, and staff, and guests who may be watching tonight. Appreciate always the opportunity to speak to you about our 2021 budget. And as my chair said, we're going to move through our slides pretty quickly. I know you've had them in front of you as you've had the request, and you've seen us before. So as you know, we're 1,000 kilometers squared watershed, and Springwater is home to the critical headwaters of both the Wye and the Sturgeon River. We've had a presence in Springwater since around 1987, and in 1997, Springwater was one of the municipal leads that formed the SSEA. And since 2009, we've been your joint municipal service board. We're also the source protection authority for the region. And we'd like to thank Councillor Ritchie, your Springwater representative on our board as well. We have a very diverse team of experts, science-based. Right now we're at 6 full-time, 4 contract. We have a part-time position, and we have held a couple of positions you can see at the top vacant as well. As you've heard previously, and as I know you're experiencing both as a municipality and in your personal probably lives and work experiences, the pandemic has certainly had a significant impact on all of us, and Severn Sound is certainly involved in that as well. We share a lot of the same challenges that have been mentioned. Our office has been closed since March. We've had a hybrid return with the majority of our staff working remotely, but our IT person, as well as 2 of our field staff, have certainly had to be in and out. We've seen a significant increase in public inquiries. I think people being at home, noticing what's happening in the watershed, that sort of thing. Our team has really adapted well. I believe, and shifted to working and developing services online and remotely, including expanding our citizen science program, what we refer to a lot of as our watch programs. Our costs have obviously also increased and shifted in ways none of us would have expected, both from the PPE supplies, new protocols and policies, training required, especially for those of us older folks who aren't used to doing everything online. Computer and IT, certainly having to make sure we've put our staff in positions to be as effective as possible working in a new environment, working from home. Similarly, we've had to do a lot of upgrades like using laptops or purchasing laptops as well and shifting to that remote work. The safety and sanitizing protocols, cleaning increase within the office as well. And it certainly increases the time, as everybody is likely experiencing, to do the regular work that we do. So it changes your ability to get as much accomplished. And we certainly stay in touch with both the medical officer of health as well as municipal CAOs. So we want to thank your CAO as well, who's been very helpful when I've needed to phone and ask what our municipalities are doing as well, and to share some of those thoughts as well. And it certainly reminded us all of how critical the health of the environment is, both clean water and natural green spaces, as we see a lot of folks who really need to access the space. Highlights for some of the field work that we've had still ongoing. Our monitoring programs continued, but really got off to a late start this year, and the team had to pivot significantly. They took the risk to continue to sample and preserve those samples. The provincial analysis labs were closed and have only reopened recently. And so our team was able to do a modified program and make sure they had samples preserved so they could still be submitted, our chemistry samples. Monitoring invertebrates and chemistry in the streams, again, the sturgeon and Y within Springwater. And it has delayed our Ore Lake program, the majority of the fieldwork. We still were able to complete some this year, but the majority of the fieldwork has been pushed to 2021. Doing that water quality survey that we do on a 5-year rotation. We did respond to several issues on the lake and did some modified sampling when we were out doing that, and as well as have picked up some new citizen science volunteers on the lake as well. The source protection program, although we're fully aware your risk management services are provided by a different partner, but source water protection services we do provide include the annual reporting, municipal reporting to the province. We help support that. We've also had to shift our stewardship programming, again, because most of that requires contact or field visits, site visits. So we shifted and deferred our tree program, both programs, both the planting and the seedling, to 2021. And we're currently in planning and ordering stage for both of those. So we would welcome orders for those programs. And again, putting protocols in place, expecting that we'll have to still be dealing with distancing and those sorts of things in the coming year. The seedling purchase, like I mentioned, again, thank you for your township. You support that. It's a no-cost program to the municipality, but you certainly help with promotion and providing pickup locations as needed. The invasive species program we've had some shift in staffing in that program, and 2020 again offered certainly some challenges, particularly because it's so field intensive. But our coordinator has documented over 20 species within Springwater to date, including a couple that we've heard a lot about this year, the mystery snails. Specifically, we're finding those in Ore Lake and some other inland lakes like Bass Lake and Oromadonte. And also, as many of you likely know, certainly a public focus this year has been on the gypsy moth outbreak. So a lot of calls on that. Again, staff realized very early on that we weren't able to communicate and help people get the resources they needed in the regular way we would have done that. So they've shifted to creating videos and lots of online resources that are slightly new to us. Last week we had our first meeting of the invasive species municipal working group. And fortunately, I'm not sure that you were able to have somebody attend that, but we'll look forward to having somebody from Springwater attend upcoming meetings. So looking forward from the rest of this fiscal into 21, certainly continuing with the programs and services that I've spoken to and continuing to pivot to adapt to our collective situation and to what municipalities may or may not be asking us for in terms of some different services or different ways to deliver. And again, doing more of that shift to online and virtual videos, webinars. I think Mayor Allen, you were able to join our Great Lakes Economic Values webinar, which we delivered. And again, we thank the Canadian Environmental Law Association helped us in the delivery of that as well. Expanding our citizens science programs, like I've mentioned, we do have some new volunteers in Springwater. I believe they're specifically on Ore Lake. And we certainly welcome more within the Severn Sound watershed as folks may be interested, and we can help connect people to some of that programming. We will be continuing, like I mentioned, with the deferral of the Orr Lake Water Quality Survey. Next piece is into 21 as well. And we're also in the process of developing data on the Sturgeon River flow and thermal classification that we would be able to provide to the township as well for your use in planning. We're continuing to also develop and expand our climate resilience program, formerly known as Sustainable Severn Sound, and we have brought that organization within the fold of the SSEA. And that will include being a central point of contact for climate change, as well as we're working on proposals to do natural asset assessments with a couple of municipalities at this point. So we know you haven't been involved in that program, but we certainly like to make sure that the opportunity for you to join that program remains. And that's why you see it as a separate line item in the budget request. And so with that, I will pass it to our board chair, Mr. Walma.
Thank you very much, Julie. I'm glad to see I'm not the only council member that struggles with overhead lighting. Strength in numbers. Anyway, my apologies. We with the actual ask for 2021 is 98,106. The core funding piece is 80,209, with water quality survey for Orr Lake being $6,742. The ask for the Sustainable Severn Sound project is $1,155. And again, that brings you into the FCM's PCP program, where you can track and analyze your GHGs, emissions, and hopefully start a plan in place to decrease your overall municipality's corporate emission program. So if there are questions or comments about anything to do with the budget, we'd be happy to elaborate on them. One thing I did want to quickly note on the increase this year, Julie did outline a lot of the COVID-19 protocols, equipment, et cetera, that add to that. But one piece that I think we all remember is we did recently change over buildings. We left a 4,000 square foot commercial space, which we were paying roughly $13,000 annually for. Nowhere can you find anything close to that. So we also have a phased in agreement with Newmarket Tay Hydro. Basically, they were generous enough to start us off at that base level, but they are slowly increasing us back to a market rent. So not only do we have CPI built into the budget, but there are other costs associated there as well. So happy for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Julie and Stefan. Stefan, I believe you said Sustainable Severn Sound was $1,155. I think you misspoke. It's $11,155.
Yeah, definitely the 11,000.
Okay. All right. If you take the presentation down, I'll be able to see everybody. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So I open it up to discussion from council, please. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, what was our budget last year? And I believe it's going up by 11,100 and change. Is that correct? But I don't know what it was last year. 2020, I should say.
I don't have.
2020 was 81,683 compared to a base budget of 87,070. Plus the program change of 11,351 equals 98,421 in total.
Yes, Your Worship, we were, the board approved a 5% budget increase over 2019 for this year. The 11,000 for the SSS is a separate request and does not include that.
Okay. Other comments, please? So the Orr Lake would proceed in 2021, and that's a 2-year project, is it, Julie?
Yes, Your Worship. That's the cost for that program is split over 2 years because the Year 1, which you've already paid for, is when we do the field work. Year 2 is when we do the analysis, get the lab work and all of that done. So the costs are split over 2. So we're taking a chance that the cost doesn't go up for the lab work next year.
So the reporting on that would be by the end of 2021, would it?
And yes, Your Worship, through end of 21, early 22 usually.
Right. Okay. I don't see any cards. Any other comments then, council? All right. We are at 5.2 and we have 2 recommendations. I look for a mover and a seconder for the first one, please. Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ritchie, that the presentation from Severn Sound Environmental Association regarding the 2021 budget request be received, and that the 2021 SSEA operating budget request of $87,070 representing Springwater's share be included for consideration in the final draft 2021 budget. All those in favor? That is carried. And a mover and seconder for the next recommendation, please. Councillor Ma, Councillor Moore, that the program change request PC number 12 from the Severn Sound Environmental Association from SSEA, from the Sustainable Severn Sound, in the amount of $11,351 be included for consideration in the final draft 2021 budget. All those in favor? That is carried. Again, thank you both for coming this evening and waiting and presenting.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we are at 5.3 and let me just get to that 1 second, please. 5.3 Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority. I now call upon Mr. Keith White, who's the board chair, Marianne McLeod, vice chair, and Doug Hevner, CAO, and Cheryl Flanagan, director of corporate services, to present the 2021 MVCA budget request. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor Allen. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Mary Ann isn't with us. She was presenting to her council in Collingwood this evening, so she won't be with us. Chair White is with us, though, and Cheryl. I'd like to ask Cheryl to share our... There you go. All right. Just move to the next slide then. I'd like to start off with just a little bit of the history of our watershed. We've been at the watershed business in the area for 60 years, and our watershed covers 3,700 square kilometers in size. And you're one of our members. We have 18 municipalities that we work with, and there are some definite significant natural features, including the Oak Ridges Moraine in our south, the Niagara Escarpment to the west side, wonderful Minising wetlands, and Georgian Bay to the north. Our board members are appointed for 4-year terms by council, and all of our board members are municipal councillors or mayors or deputy mayors. Our watershed is one of the fastest growing watersheds within the province, and in Springwater we cover 543 square kilometers of the township. The key water features that we work with are the Nottawasaga, the Wye Rivers, the Willow, the Matheson and Marl Creeks, and again, the Minising wetlands. Next slide, please. Just work this up for your review as you sit in here tonight. I think it's important that we do visit these visions and missions. In 2019, we went through a very substantive integrated watershed management process. It was a 20-year look into our watershed and how we propose to manage it. And this is the vision and mission that we came up with. Next slide, please. This year, you got to see our 2021 overview program. It's a booklet that acted as a budget companion for you to work through. If you haven't had an opportunity to go through it, I really encourage you to. I think it provides you with some really good generalized highlights of each and every program that we provide for you, as well as levy information and budget information as well. Next slide, please. We're going to go through some accomplishments here. Our watershed science program, as Julie alluded to earlier, monitoring was really slowed down this year with the provincial labs being closed. Our monitoring program, we actually laid off the person that was in that role and removed them into a contract position that was funded by an outside grant agency. So we saved some money in that respect. We completed some watershed monitoring strategy work, and we developed some very good protocols for moving on to the future, finalizing a report documenting our NDCA wetland mapping history and proposing protocols for how we'll move forward in the future to really handle monitoring, because monitoring is one of the measures of the watershed that I think is vitally important. It tells the picture of what's happening on the ground, and it's vital. Next slide, please. Our education program was ravaged this year. We really held the line with the public health unit, and we shut down our classes on site. We didn't host our normal complement. We laid off virtually all of our staff, save per one. Our senior manager of our education program was laid off partially. She's now back to work. We're working with Simcoe County School Board to deliver some virtual programming, and we were able to partner with Georgian Bay Forever over in Collingwood area to offer a program on microplastics that's been really, really well received. So we have 2 staff members that are satellite teaching at that school, and we're now making inroads into schools in the watershed in Simcoe County to do some satellite teaching to help with their programming at school sites. We're looking at trying to bring the program back next year, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. Next slide, please. Our stewardship program is a vital part of the work that we do. We're a riverine system. We have the Nottawasaga River that starts out in the Oak Ridges Moraine and stretches down through the valley and across to Georgian Bay. In your watershed, it has tremendous impacts on what happens to the Minising wetland and the water holding capacities there. We're blessed in that we have an extremely talented wildlife biologist that's been with the Associate Authority for a number of years. This year, we're very proud of some of the work that was accomplished. Northern brook trout enhancement program was done, where we went through and we were able to restabilize 300 meters of erosion steam bank in a cattling area. It was, we provided a cattle crossing fenced for the farm family to allow their herd to get to a back pasture. Prior to the work, there was a lot of damage done to the stream, a lot of erosion and mudding going into the stream, and the fish habitat was severely damaged. We had Chinook in the river system this year for the first time in a number of years, so we're really happy that what's happening there. We also looked at doing a dam reclamation where we removed a dam, the Patoon Dam, which flows into the Black Ash Creek and then runs down into Georgian Bay. Dams and ponds and on-stream ponds can really fluctuate water temperatures and cause increasing temperatures. So this allows us to maintain that cold stream fishery that we're really working for. I think it's vitally important for all of our watershed in that we maintain these cool water streams going in, especially into areas like the Minising, where we have some of the largest northern pike recharge and one of the largest breeding populations of lake sturgeon in all of Ontario. 2 resources we're very proud to have in the Springwater Township. Next slide, please. Our forestry program this year is down from 250,000 trees to 107,000 trees. We were able to get a program up and running. We've created over 134 acres of forested land. We did this working through partnerships. As you may remember, in the spring, the province removed the funding for the 50 million tree program, and then the federal government was able to come in with approximately 2/3 of the funding for the remainder of the program. We work with the provincial government and municipal governments, Forests Ontario, and private corporations and private landowners to garner approximately $272,000 in funding. And we also managed over 1,000 acres of managed forest. We target forested areas that are in the agricultural class zones 2 to 7, although some class 1 land is put into forestry. It's at the discretion of the landowner. We're not actively going out and soliciting people right now. 100% of our forest tree planting programs come to us and ask us to plant the forests. So we're quite proud of that. It's a program that I think is vitally important in maintaining those cold streams and repairing banks along the riverways. Next slide, please. Flood management, we've seen that really severely restricted in funding from the province, a reduction of $97,000 into the program. This was our first year where we were trying to really cover some ground with a lot less funding from the province in that regard. It's important that we deal with doing erosion control structures and all the work that we do in maintaining these things, especially in the Utopia area, the New Lowell area, the Tottenham area where we have dams in place, as well as the Pretty River Dike in Collingwood. I want you to take a look at this picture though, because that's vitally important, because it is what we do. Conservation authorities and people that work in flood protection can't prevent flooding from happening. What they can have happen is they can keep that infrastructure out of the floodplain. So when we work with the planning departments from our municipal partners and we work with our development community, we're really encouraged to try to keep them out of the riparian banks and out of the flooded areas. This is the type of event we'd like to see when there's a flood, river flowing over the edges of the banks, those banks slowing down the turbidity of the water, the infrastructure not being damaged. And I think it's important that we work together as partners to really identify where development is going to happen within our watershed. This year, we saw the highest water levels in the Georgian Bay area. The Great Lakes in general are some of the highest recorded water levels in the history since they've been recording these levels. In response to that, we really worked well with Collingwood and with Wasaga Beach to try to develop an emergency strategy to allow homeowners to get out and try to do some remedial repairs and get all their permitting in place to work. It's important to note that when we work on a riverbank, we work on a stream, or we work on a lake shore, that we have to be really cognizant of what is left or right or north or south, upstream or downstream. So the effects that we do in front of our own backyard may have tremendously detrimental effects on the remainder of the watershed, either up ahead by blocking streams or downstream by flowing water into areas where it shouldn't really move forward. So we've been working with the Ministry of Natural Resources. We reached out to them and had meetings with them in order to try to see if we could expedite permitting in the area. We also have to work with the right to treaty consultation through the Georgian Ojibwa Southern Nation. They have 60 days to comment on any of these permits that go out through the MNRNF. So it's not just the NVCA permitting, but it's a partnership of the MNR and Indigenous band as well. Next slide, please. Our planning and development department, we saw a tremendous slowdown in large development, subdivision development pieces. Although our permitting in the second and third quarter is ahead of our second quarter and third quarter 2020 over 2019. And our permitting, we really tried to get ahead of the game and try to work at how we could remove some of that red tape and how we could get process completed faster. In the first quarter of January, in the January quarter of 2020, we set a target of trying to turn around a 90-day permit in 60 days. And we accomplished that at an 85% rate. The 90-day permit we accomplished at 90%. So we weren't really turning it quite the way we wanted to. We then went into the COVID situation where we were working in a satellite situation with staff away from the office and developing new procedures and new methodologies. And we've been able to turn around the 60-day permit in 95% time and in the 90-day permit in 98% target. So we've really enhanced and improved that turnaround. And we've done that with more non-compliance checks. We've done that with an increased permitting. We've had more general inquiries. Overall, we've seen more permits year to date than we have year to date last year at the same time. So some of these things are really helping us to get that work done in a much faster and efficient method. We also worked with the National Disaster Mitigation Program doing two projects. We finished a flood mapping project in the Wasaga Beach Basin. We're right now working with Greenland in the town itself, their engineering and planning department to vet those numbers and work them into existing developments to see if there's been any changes on where developmental properties can occur in those two basins. We've also been working with a group down in Agilitas to do a floodplain study down there as well. Currently, we're also looking at national disaster mitigation programming for next year as well. So that's an avenue that we could use to investigate floodplain mapping throughout our watershed. Next slide, please. Our conservation lands program, you know it as well as we do. COVID saw a tremendous influx of people coming to the area. We had a tremendous number of people going up to the bluffs up in the Nottawasaga Bluffs. The Fort Willow area was very well populated this year. For the most part, people were really, really responsive. They were being responsible participants. They were honoring that social distancing and physical distancing. They weren't littering. They were adhering to parking passes and paying. We did accomplish some increase in funds through our parking meters this year, and that's vitally important. To the lands program itself, we lost a considerable chunk of revenue by not hosting our Maple Syrup Festival. We partner with Rotary International in the Berry Complement. Half of the funding that we generate goes usually to RVH to pay off long-term debt. So it's a vitally important part of our region's work. It's a strong hospital that supports a large catchment area in the Simcoe County area. And for ourselves, that took away $15,000 in funding for our program. We also had a shutdown of our wedding programs, which took away approximately $85,000 in potential revenues for us. Fortunately, we've been able to book those venues for next year, and we hope to have a full wedding lineup next year. We did look outside the box and try to do some things. When we haven't got any people on the site like we normally would with our education program or our wedding program, we actually hosted a film company that came in and shot a movie on the Tiffin site. And they've rebooked again. They're going to come in and rebook again. So we've been able to recover a little bit of revenue from that. And we look to work with this group in the future as well. Next slide, please. So looking forward, you saw the implications of Bill 108. We had a really good stakeholder engagement process with MECP. Individually, our chair, vice chair, and our senior management team from the NDCA went down and met with the minister's senior staff in Toronto. We also participated in stakeholder engagement session as a group with many of you who attended as municipal partners in the Barrie area. And then there was some online engagement as well. Since that time, Bill 229 has come on, and the legislation proposals that have been included in the budget bill. You may see some of the commenting in the paper right now, and we forwarded some information to your clerk and your CAO earlier last week, or earlier this week for your review and consideration on that. This year, we also implemented a 5-year strategic plan and a 5-year business plan. I think both these plans will allow us to be very nimble to accept and accommodate any changes that may come our way. And I just want to assure you that if and when changes do occur to the procedures and protocols and how we work with our partners, we'll adhere to them. We'll work with you to develop a system that works best for you and for the NDCA. That client service piece is what I was speaking to earlier on the calculations from the 90-day to 60-day permit. I think it's important. We got ahead of that and tried to move that forward, and we'll continue to work that way. Next slide, please. So just a little bit on the overview of our budget processes. The COVID pandemic hit very hard, and I'm going to say that we're probably seeing a loss forecasted forward between $100,000 and $110,000. We're not coming to our municipal partners hat in hand. We've worked really diligently over the last several years to develop a surplus, raising funds to put into our reserves. And we'll be recovering our loss from 2020 with reserve funding from our reserves. We're also investigating right now the Canadian income wage subsidy. that is offered through a federal program. Initially, we didn't believe we had any ability to participate in the program, but one of our colleagues in TRCA Conservation Authority was successful in getting the funding. So we've gone through the process, and we're now waiting their decision on whether we get some funds to cover some of that loss through that area. I've already pointed out the flood control reduction of $97,000, which is almost a 57% loss over last year. And then we're going to have some losses in benefits, increases to costs and benefits and insurance premiums. Our insurance investor has already told us that our insurance premiums will be going up. And we envision that property taxes will probably rise across the region as well. I'm now going to turn the numbers portion of the budget over to my colleague, Director of Corporate Services, Cheryl Flanagan. Cheryl, go ahead.
Thank you. And through Mayor Allen, I'm just going to start by saying, how are we addressing the pressures that Doug had discussed? The board approved a $38,000 guideline for our levy increase for our 2021 budget. And staff worked very hard to come up with a responsible budget for our member municipalities by looking at certain things like our 3-year trends. We've eliminated a permanent full-time position through attrition and retirement. We've decided not to fill that position in order to save some money. We have eliminated step increases for our staff for 2021. They'll only be getting a cost of living increase. We also looked at all of our expenditures and potential revenues wherever possible. And then we ended up coming in below the board approved guidelines at $35,768. Based on the current value assessment provided to us by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and how we are required to distribute the levy as per the Conservation Authorities Act, Springwater's portion of the increase is $3,457 over 2020's number, making our operational levy request for 2021 $191,877. This slide shows how we take Springwater's contributions and add the other municipalities, along with some provincial and federal funding through grants that we may get, combined with other grants through private companies, and as well as the revenues that we create on our own, as mentioned, things like weddings, and how we create an additional $4.8 million for a total of just over a $5 million budget. So what is the impact to our watershed residents? As seen in our new program overview, it works out to be $12.62 per resident, which is the exact same amount as it was for 2020. The other chart is quite small on this slide, so I do encourage you to look at the program overview as it breaks it down by programs even further. Our asset management plan was introduced in 2016 and was implemented in our 2017 budget. Springwater chose to phase in, and the phasing in was completed in the 2020 budget. This plan has been updated every year, and the update for the 2021 budget saw some savings by staff, which resulted in a decrease in the needs for 2021. Springwater's contribution for 2021 will be $10,511, which is down from $11,076 in 2020. There's a few examples here of some of the scheduled capital projects for 2021, and it is important to note that some of this has been transferred over from the 2020 budget into 2021, and funding has already been allocated for it in the 2020 budget, as due to COVID, we had to delay some of the projects. This slide shows the total ask between our operational and asset levies. As you will see, the total ask from Springwater for 2021 is $202,388, which is a total increase of $2,892 over 2020. So thank you very much for listening to this. I'm just going to turn this over to our chair, Keith White, to say a few words before we open up for discussion.
There we go. I think I'm live through you, Mary Allen. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to all of Springwater Council and staff for this opportunity to present to you. I think that it's a fairly detailed overview, and I believe from my 10 years as a municipal councilor, but also on the MVCA board, that the board is always, let me assure you, always very diligent in its annual budget. The process starts usually in the summer. So in August of this year, with staff already doing a little bit of internal preliminary budgeting, they come to the board of directors and they ask for some guidance as to where the board may feel the percent increase may be, keeping in mind that based on your assessment and your growth in any one of the 18 municipalities, assessment and growth may go up and down. So that in turn trickles back to the particular municipality as to whether you may see an increase or in fact a decrease in the actual dollar amount. So this particular August, the board of directors directed staff to bring in not more than a 1.5% overall increase. And at our end of September into October meeting, the staff actually brought forward a 1.4% increase. And so at that particular meeting, the board of directors discussed it in detail, and as a result did approve by motion the approval of the draft budget for circulation to municipalities. So as we are in the process now, we are looking to our municipalities both directly through your treasurers or CAOs and yourselves, but also importantly through your municipally appointed representative, being Mayor Allen. And so please feel free to further bring forward to our December meeting, actually, is where the budget based on comments from our municipal representatives and municipalities, the budget will be placed in front of the board for a final vote on a budget for 2020. So with that, I just say thank you again very much for this opportunity, and I bring greetings from all of the representatives of the board of directors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug, Cheryl, and Keith for the presentation. Can I get a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please? And then we'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Cabral. So Council, open it up for discussion. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. This is through to Cheryl. Cheryl, I was wondering if you could tell me and the rest of council the amount of money that the MVCA has collected from Springwater over the last year in regards to fees.
Cheryl, please.
Seems like I ask you this every year.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, to Councillor Ritchie. You know what? I should have been prepared for that question, and I apologize. I'm not. I will, however, get that information sent over to you tomorrow.
Thank you kindly, dear.
You're very welcome.
Next. Okay. Any other questions, Council? Certainly, it's been a busy time with Doug, Keith, Cheryl, with this bill coming out, and lots of emails flying around, lots of discussion. So we have started discussion certainly amongst us, and we will continue to be discussing the impacts of what we interpret to be the potential impacts of this bill. But that's not primarily what we're talking about here now, but I just wanted to touch on it. So I don't see any other cards up here right at the present. So I will read the motion that the presentation from Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority regarding the 2021 budget request be received, and that the 2021 MVCA operating budget request in the amount of $191,877.13 representing Springwater's share be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2021 budget. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And can I have a mover and a seconder for the next motion, please? Councillor Ma and Councillor Cabral. that the 2021 MVCA Asset Management Levy request in the amount of $10,511.13 representing Springwater's share be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2021 budget. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor? That is carried. Again, I thank all of you for coming this evening and waiting and presenting and answering questions. Thank you.
Thank
Through
you
the mayor,
very
if I
much.
may, thank you very much for the opportunity. Good luck with your council meeting tonight, and please stay safe. It's not fun times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll let you disconnect there, Doug. Okay. All right. Well, that does it for this evening. So I need a mover and seconder to recess the meeting until it resumes on November 25th. Councillor Moore, Councillor Ma, that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now recess at 8:16 p.m. to resume again November 25th, 2020 at 3 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Good first session. Bye for now.